See, Putin's making a lot more money out of a higher oil price. Is Russia strengthened by all of this?
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning that. And we should absolutely not forget that this is the issue facing Europe, Russia's genocidal war in Ukraine, which has existential implications for Europe as a whole. I mean, in simple terms, Putin is the gainer out of this. He's the gainer out of the war in Iran. He's the gainer because America is fixed. And it is in his interest to see America continuing to be fixed, which is why he's giving targeting information to the Iranians, which is why the Iranians were able to strike Prince Said Air Base. And you can be absolutely sure that if they put Marines ashore, all those Marines will be targeted by Russian-provided target information. And indeed, he's providing drones. So the longer it goes on, the more America is fixed. He's gaining because of the higher oil prices, although that is tempered by the fact that the Ukrainians have achieved remarkable success in the last week, destroying something like 40% of Russia's oil exporting capabilities and facilities in the Baltic. And any money that goes back into the Russian economy, I mean, this is an economy which is in the death zone. It's exactly in the same position as a climber over 8,000 feet. The body begins to eat itself. It's facing existential long-term damage. But nevertheless, he is gaining economically. And the final point, of course, is that the Americans fired off something like 4 times as many Patriot missiles in the first 4 days of the war as they've supplied Ukraine in 4 years. So Putin is gaining because there will be less kit to provide to the Ukrainians. And the final point, if I may, is that there is a clear linkage here, as I've said, between, we've got to join the dots up between the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, and who knows what might happen in the Far East as well.
Richard, absolute privilege speaking with you this morning. Thanks very much for your time. Do appreciate it. That's retired General Richard Chirrath. He's a former NATO Deputy Supreme Commander of Europe and Managing Partner of Strategia Worldwide. Well, staying with this theme, a broker for US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth reportedly looked to make a multi-million-dollar investment in defence companies shortly before the US began military action against Iran. That's according to the Financial Times, which cited 3 people familiar with the matter who say the Morgan Stanley broker inquired about investing in an actively managed BlackRock Defence ETF. But the investment did not go ahead as the fund was not available to Morgan Stanley clients. Well, the fund Hegseth's broker reportedly inquired about has fallen almost 13% since the start of the war in Iran. A Pentagon spokesperson has dismissed the report as, quote, entirely false and fabricated. BlackRock and Morgan Stanley have not commented on the Financial Times story. Well, I can tell you the first byline on that story is Paul Murphy, who's the FT's investigations editor. Someone who I've known and worked with, I first worked with him more than 30 years ago at the Daily Telegraph here in London. He is one of the best journalists I have ever worked with. And so I think there's probably more to this story than the White House and the US Secretary Defense Department is saying.
Is that right? 30 years ago you must have, was that work experience at school? Surely it can't be that far back. But what's really interesting about this story, I was talking about this just a couple of weeks ago, what we've seen on the betting markets, the sites like Polymarket and Kalshi, and in the days before the Iran war, before the US and Israeli operations began, we saw a surge in bets by a handful of traders on those prediction sites, accurately placing bets that the Iranian regime was about to come under fire in that way, and that raised questions. That then sort of faded into the background. A couple of weeks later, there was a similar situation where just before President Trump put out a social media post that moved the market on the oil price significantly, 15 minutes before, a huge value of bets were placed on the futures market, and oil futures contracts changed hands 15 minutes before a post went out that moved the markets, which made whoever placed those very well-timed bets, incredibly wealthy, and made them a lot of money. At the time, the SEC didn't respond to requests for comment, nor did the CME Group. So some interesting things going on there, and certainly worth watching, certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, there's a pattern of behaviour here. Either that or there's some very, very clairvoyant people around. Now, G7 energy and finance ministers pledged to take any necessary measures to keep stability in the energy market. However, no specific steps were agreed. Meanwhile, the EU Commissioner for Energy, Dan Jorgensen, called for a reduction in fossil fuel imports as well as an extra boost to renewable energy production. Well, the French President Emmanuel Macron is set to arrive in Japan today for talks with the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi before heading to South Korea later this week. He'll be accompanied by a delegation of French ministers and business leaders as France hopes to strengthen partnerships with Japan in areas such as nuclear energy and AI. Well, Charlotte's with us here. Very, very important visit, this.
It is an important visit, one that has been planned for a long time, but of course now happening in a particular context with the war in Iran. And we know the question of the Strait of Hormuz there will be on the table as part of the discussion, including the issue of cooperation on maritime security in the Strait once the fighting has ceased. That will be one of the key topics when President Macron, who's about to land in about an hour, arrives in Japan. He will be meeting with the Prime Minister Takaichi tomorrow afternoon. Of course, as you were saying, traveling with a delegation of CEOs, because it still remains business as usual. So different industries will be represented, including luxury. We know that Japan is an important market for this, but also tech. We know that the CEO of Mistral AI, Arthur Mensch, will be part of the delegation. Now, civil nuclear is a key topic of cooperation between the two countries. You know that this is part of the agenda of the Japanese Prime Minister to reopen a lot of the nuclear reactors there in the country. France has been part of the decommissioning of Fukushima since 2011, but now, of course, the Prime Minister wants to reopen a lot of these reactors as part of the energy independence and resilience. So we expect potentially some contracts on this, and we know the CEOs of EDF and Orano and Framatome will be part of the delegation there traveling. Now, there will be also some bilaterals for the President with some key CEOs, both in Japan and in Korea, including SoftBank, Samsung and Hyundai. So, you know, trying to sell France, of course, as a destination for investment there as well. But here again, a tricky exercise at a time of tough diplomatic situation, whether it's the war in Iran or the tensions between Japan and China around the question of Taiwan. So this will be also on the table. Thankfully for the President, the visit will finish on the lighter, more fun touch with a dinner in Seoul with stars from K-pop and Korean cinema. So an easier finish to a diplomatic exercise for the rest of the week.
Indeed. Charlotte, thank you very much. We will see you a little bit later. Coming up on the show, South Korean AI chip startup Rebellions warns that its revenue is limited by its supply of memory chips as it targets US expansion. We'll hear what else their CEO had to say after the break.
That's too long. Let's leave.
सर कितना टाइम लगेगा?
सर 30 मिनट्स लगेगा। सर फोटो मत लो प्लीज। नेक्स्ट आप ही जाओ ना।
मैं तो वीगन हूँ।
क्या कर रहे हैं?
KYC. You're losing almost 50 customers every day. You can extend the space and add 20 more tables here. Or funds, collateral free loan whenever you open a current account with Axis Bank.
आपको और आपकी जरूरतों को अच्छे से समझना हमारे लिए वही है असली KYC, एक्सिस बैंक।
मीनाक्षी, मैंने सुना है घर काफी अच्छा बनाया है।
Try some of you.
Delicious. मैंने कितनी बार बोला इनको कि टाइल्स बदलवा लो, सुनते ही नहीं। हाँ, हिना, पर ये तो देखा ही नहीं। Beautiful. And what is this called?
कजारिया। जब घर में कजारिया टाइल्स लगाओगे
तो लोग तो पूछेंगे ही।
Buying health insurance, why pay higher premium when I can get it cheaper? But cheaper plans can mean costly claims. Add-ons cover what base plans miss, like no room rent cap, no copay, and shorter waiting periods. Whereas base plans have room rent limit, copay, and longer waiting periods. Invest extra now, avoid claim disaster later. One big red slice is your copay. Instead of paying the full X amount as a copay, you could just pay 10% of that X amount and secure an add-on. The choice is yours. Sometimes skipping a small add-on could cost you a fortune.
Health Cover Uncovered, an initiative by Star Health Insurance and CNBC TV18.
क्योंकि ये है दवा इंडिया, मेरा और आपका सबका ख्याल रखने वाला। तभी तो ये है हर घर की फार्मेसी।
दवा इंडिया, हर घर की फार्मेसी।
KKR का रॉकेट बिजली का बिल बाउंसर के जैसे मेरे सर के ऊपर से जा रहा है जी। एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना जी। हाँ जी। और जनरेटर की पॉल्यूशन से तुम क्लीन बोल्ड हो जाएंगे।
एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना जी।
हाँ जी।
हमारी बिजली रन आउट हो गई है। एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना।
हाँ जी। अब KKR के 6s पर घर होंगे सोलराइज। जहाँ विक्रम सोलर, वहाँ खुशियों वाली सनशाइन।
हाँ जी।
Sir, what do you think?
The new Skoda Kushaq. Easy to love.
Skoda.
Oi, need to be intelligent for investing, so Rubik's Cube, Jigsaw, Sudoku, Crossword. Oi, for investing, your app should be intelligent. App?
Trading Signal, Smart Discovery, Secure Exit, Ask Angel.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Premium boarding, premium space, premium meals and more. In India's only premium economy.
They are actually accelerating it. Every major software efficiency breakthrough we've seen so far, whether it's a DeepSeek or Google latest research, follows the same historic pattern in computation. When compute becomes cheaper, usage explodes. Lower cost per token doesn't shrink demand. It unlocks the potential. It unlocked entire new application that did not make sense in terms of cost before. We are moving from occasional AI to always-on AI, real-time AI, embedded AI. AI has become part of every product, every workflow, and eventually every user interaction. That means more requests, tighter cost constraint, and deployment everywhere. Efficiency improvement do not eliminate infrastructure. They move AI from luxury to utility, and utilities always scale massively.
So the view of Sun Kyun Park and actually the broader tech industry is that more efficiencies, better performance is going to equal more demand and actually the need for more chips and some of these AI services. So interesting to see, and what's going to be key is how those models continue to develop this year and how the chip makers like Rebellions and some of those other startups in the space respond to that demand as well.
All right, thanks Arjun, great interview. Well, coming up on the programme, crude prices whipsaw as the war in Iran keeps markets on edge, with traders digesting conflicting messaging about the possibility for escalation. Coming up, more on that and the latest from the markets. Of course, you're looking there at the price of Brent crude, slightly off this morning, but what a month it's been. Brent crude enjoying record gains in this month of March. Back after this short break. Do stay with us.
अधिकम ब्याज दरम प्राप्त औषधि तथा प्रमुख औषधि विक्रय किम अभी शरम हेलो KYC सर सिल्वर लाइनिंग कार्यक्रमेण स्थावर निक्षेपेषु 0.75% यावत् ब्याज दरम प्राप्नुत। अति उत्तम।
आपको और आपकी जरूरतों को अच्छे से समझना हमारे लिए वही है असली KYC एक्सिस बैंक।
मेरे पापा ना ट्रेन बनाते हैं और मेरी मम्मी ना रॉकेट बनाती है। चल पे उड़ता तारा देख रहे हो? हाँ। वो तारा नहीं, एक सैटेलाइट है, मेरे चाचा ने बनाया। चल फ्रेंकू। मामा आप ये बनाएंगे? चल फ्रेंकू। तेरे मामा रोबोट बनाएंगे क्या? ये जो तुम बोलते हो तुम्हारी फैमिली, क्या वो सच्ची में ऐसा बनाती है? ये देखो पापा जियोलॉजिस्ट हैं, रॉक्स में मेटल्स और मिनरल्स ढूंढते हैं। मम्मी माइनिंग इंजीनियर, वो इन्हें निकालती हैं। अपनी आंटी मेटल्स प्यूरिफाई करती हैं। इरफान ब्रो, कोमल दीदी। समझ गई। क्या समझी? कि तुम्हारा परिवार वेदांता है और वो ये सांप बनाते हैं जिससे वो सांप बनता है।
वेदांता, क्योंकि आसमान को छूने वाले रास्ते जमीन से शुरू होते हैं। मेटल्स, क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स, ऑयल एंड गैस, टेक्नोलॉजी। वेदांता, देश की जरूरतों के लिए।
Trying to invest in today's market is like getting stuck in a traffic jam. Too much noise, too many turns. Everyone's shouting advice, but no one's really guiding. That's why you need a weekly investment GPS. Translate market noise into smart signals with insights from India's most trusted fund managers. Get a deeper market understanding week on week so you can grow your portfolio with clarity. Bandhan Mutual Fund presents MF Corner.
We plan for targets, but do we plan for time?
Today's workforce dreams fast, but peace of mind doesn't come from paychecks.
It comes from a plan to invest in your retirement.
The National Pension System, a trusted, flexible, and full determined solution. It's simple to adopt and delivers high returns, helping employees grow their retirement corpus steadily. Smart companies adopt NPS Corporate. Smarter employees ask for it.
NPS जरूरी है।
Future security is teamwork. That's why.
NPS जरूरी है। KKR का रॉकेट बिजली का बिल बाउंसर के जैसे मेरे सर के ऊपर से जा रहा है जी। एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना जी। हाँ जी। और जनरेटर की पॉलिश से तुम क्लीन बोल्ड हो जाएंगे।
एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना जी।
हाँ जी।
हमारी बिजली रन आउट हो गई है। एक विक्रम सोलर 6 लगा दो ना।
हाँ जी। अब KKR के 6s पर घर होंगे सोलराइज, जहाँ विक्रम सोलर वहाँ खुशियों वाली सनशाइन।
हाँ जी।
India का first heavy duty hybrid AC, Mitsubishi Heavy Duty AC with long reach airflow and 3D cooling. Mitsubishi Heavy Duty, live life heavy duty.
Oh hello.
Need to be intelligent for investing. So vitamin B1, B6, B9, B12.
Oh hello. For investing, your app should be intelligent. Trading signal, smart discovery, secure exit. Ask Angel. Angel One, intelligent one.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Been made in negotiations with Iran, but he threatened strikes against oil wells and Kharg Island, as well as electricity and desalination plants, if the Strait of Hormuz is not, quote, immediately reopened and a peace deal reached shortly. Well, CNBC's team in Dubai has heard explosions following a missile threat, with authorities issuing an all clear in the last few minutes. Dan joins us now from Dubai. Dan, that sounds pretty hair-raising.
Well, Ian, let me update you on the situation here. We actually received an emergency alert on our phones here in downtown Dubai, and UAE authorities confirmed that just a short time ago, air defense systems have been responding to threats from Iran, including cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones. That's according to the Ministry of Defense on X just a few moments ago. We actually heard multiple loud bangs over the skyline here, and if you've been in Dubai over the last 5 weeks, you'll know the sound. It usually starts with an alert on your phone, and then just seconds later you get a series of sharp booms in the sky. not necessarily the thunder of a distant explosion, but something much closer and much more abrupt from above. And that's actually the intercept itself, likely a Patriot or THAAD missile making contact with an incoming threat at high altitude. And then sometimes you can also see a white flash or smoke, and then of course the debris comes raining down. Now, we haven't seen any smoke or debris here in downtown today, but we know that it is that secondary impact that's been causing so much of the damage on the ground over the last 5 weeks here. The Ministry of Defense actually reporting that over 2,300 aerial threats have been engaged since the conflict began in late February. And while the UAE's Defense Shield has been very successful in preventing mass casualty events, that falling debris has of course proven lethal, with at least 11 people killed by debris or secondary blasts here so far. And of course we have received the all clear about 20 minutes ago, but the UAE government is still urging all residents to treat the all clear siren with caution too, and of course not approach any fallen debris if it is seen on the ground. So we are seeing the all clear here in the sky over downtown Dubai right now, but of course this is a city, Ian, that remains firmly on edge given everything that's unfolded over the last 5 weeks. And of course, as we've been reporting through the course of the day as well, and over the last couple of weeks, no real military or diplomatic off-ramp emerging in this conflict thus far, with competing narratives now from the Iranians and the Americans over exactly what is going to happen next. It's back over to you.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed. We'll join Dan again soon. But for now, let's bring in Lindsay Newman, who is Visiting Research Fellow at King's College. Lindsay, very good to have you with us. Give us your assessment of how you see the situation now and the possible exits from the current conflict.
Thank you for having me. You know, the U.S. entered this war with certain objectives in mind: to degrade Iran's naval, missile, and nuclear capabilities, and to degrade that leadership structure. Just over a month in, it's fair to say they've made some progress towards achieving those goals. We know a reported 11,000 targets have been hit by the U.S. in Iran. 90% of Iran's launching capabilities have slowed. 2/3 of its production facilities for missile and drones have been degraded. But the cost to the U.S. administration has been quite high. This has been an incredibly financially costly war. There's been manpower and military resources deployed and expended here. And this is the conundrum that the U.S. now faces, that the Trump administration and Trump himself wants to, quote, finish this war, but is it willing to pay the cost, pay the price to do so? The war has proved quite costly for it. And so that's why we're seeing all this volatility in rhetoric. On the one hand, talks of mediation alongside conversations around how if this doesn't immediately resolve, that they're going to go in and strike. And we saw, in fact, that the U.S. has deployed a bunker-busting bomb yet again within Iran overnight. So this is where the volatility lies. The U.S. faces a double bind. It wants not to have to wind down operations without achieving its full aims, but it doesn't know if it's willing to pay those costs. So there's various escalation scenarios from here, escalation pathways from here, and the likelihood of sort of an off-ramp, as Dan just said, was it's stumbling towards an off-ramp. We haven't yet seen any viable off-ramp really materialize. We know there are no direct talks between the sides. It's only been indirect talks and sort of other regional mediation.
We're hearing, it's being reported that President Trump told aides he might be willing to consider ending the conflict in a way that does not even involve reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Where does that leave the region and the world if indeed he chooses that exit path?
I would be cautious about reading too far into those statements. Of course, they are making quite a lot of noise in headlines overnight because it is a sort of stunning statement. Because now the Strait of Hormuz has really vaulted to the top of the U.S. priority list because of the knock-on effects on energy pricing, energy markets, and the global economy. We know that, in a sense, that if Iran is left not to have, there's no deterrence that's been reestablished over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, in a sense, is a more volatile, a more dangerous actor after this conflict than it was before, because it has learned lessons through this war that asymmetry, that the ability to horizontally escalate this conflict to the region and with ground zero at Strait of Hormuz means it's quite effectively reestablished leverage over this conflict, even though, again, it is the more asymmetric, less capable actor in this conflict. So the idea that the U.S. administration would actually just say, we're going to pack up and go home from here, and we're not going to try to reestablish deterrence over the Strait of Hormuz, is definitely worrisome for the region. And I would caution about reading too far into this, in part because the U.S. has moved massive military personnel and kit over to the region. It's unlikely to just have done that and expended all that money and time without any plans around using it. But secondly, because the idea that this could be left in this condition and that the global economy would continue to suffer, supply chains, not just for energy and oil, but also helium, critical inputs for semiconductor chips,